If you ever find yourself on the lakes of Ohio after dark, remember this: don't answer the radio after midnight. Don't shine your light on the buoys too long. And never ever follow the ones who walk out of the water. I'm a lake patrol officer. These are the rules they gave me. And if you think they sound strange, just wait until you hear why. Chapter 1: The Rules. I didn't grow up thinking I'd be a lake patrol officer. Honestly, when I applied for the job, I thought it would be easy. Quiet. A paycheck for sitting on a boat, watching fishermen drink too many beers, and making sure nobody tipped their canoe after sunset. I was wrong. See, here in Ohio, the lakes aren't like they are in postcards. They're huge, dark, older than anyone alive can imagine. Some nights they're as still as glass, other nights they feel alive like something breathing beneath. And when I got the job, the supervisor, a grizzled old guy named Miller, handed me a small notebook. It wasn't official training. It wasn't a handbook you could find in the office. It was personal, worn, the cover stained with water. Inside, in Miller's shaky handwriting, were the rules. I remember the first time I read them. Sitting alone in the patrol boat, flashlight in one hand, the notebook in the other. The first rule made me laugh. At least at first. Rule 1. If the buoy bell rings after midnight, do not look directly at it. Strange, right? But there it was, written in bold letters. The second rule was even stranger. Rule 2. If the radio picks up voices that don't identify themselves, turn the dial until the static drowns them out. I thought it was a joke. Maybe Miller was just old and superstitious. Maybe he was trying to haze the new guy. But the rules went on. Rule 3. If you see a boat drifting with no lights and no one inside, do not tow it. Do not board it. Leave it alone. Rule 4. If someone on shore waves at you after dark, don't wave back unless you can see their face clearly. And finally, Rule 5. When you finish your shift, don't linger on the water. Dock quickly. Leave the lake before the lantern goes out. I flipped through the rest of the notebook, looking for explanations, stories, notes, but it was just those rules, repeated again and again, in Messier handwriting each time, like Miller was reminding himself. When I asked him about it the next morning, he just shook his head. "You'll see," he muttered. And that was all he said. That night was my first real shift. And it was the first time I understood that those rules weren't suggestions. They were the only thing keeping me alive. Chapter 2: The First Shift. My first night alone on the lake, the water was calm. The kind of calm that makes you uneasy, because it feels too perfect. No wind, no ripples. Just a sheet of black glass stretching out in every direction. I kept Miller's notebook in my pocket, my flashlight in my lap, and the radio crackling quietly. For the first couple hours, nothing happened. I passed a few fishermen heading in, checked some docks, circled the far shoreline. Normal stuff. I started to wonder if the rules were just there to mess with me, a test to see how gullible the new guy was. But then, just after midnight, the bell rang. It came from one of the buoys out near the center of the lake. A soft metallic clang. Now buoys don't usually ring unless the water's moving. And the water that night? Dead still. I felt my chest tighten. Rule 1. If the buoy bell rings after midnight, do not look directly at it. But my instinct was to do exactly that. To shine my spotlight across the water, find the buoy, see what was making the sound. I almost did it. My hand hovered over the switch. But something in me, maybe just the memory of Miller's voice, low and grim, held me back. The bell rang again, closer this time. I clenched my teeth and kept steering. Didn't look. Didn't shine the light. Just let the boat drift until the sound faded back into silence. That was the first time I didn't laugh at the rules. The second time came maybe 20 minutes later. The radio crackled, louder than before. A man's voice slipped through the static. Help. Just that one word. Faint. Wet-sounding, like he was speaking through water. I froze. Pressed the receiver to my ear. Help, I'm drowning. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to answer. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Rescue people? That's the job. But then I remembered Rule 2. If the radio picks up voices that don't identify themselves, turn the dial until the static drowns them out. My hand shook as I reached for the dial. Please, the voice begged. You can see me. I know you can see me. The words sent a shiver through me. Because I hadn't turned on my spotlight all night. There was no way he could know where I was. Unless, no, I didn't let myself finish that thought. I twisted the dial until the static hissed so loud it filled my ears. The voice cut off mid-sentence. I sat there in the dark, heart hammering, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. That was when I saw it. Out on the water, maybe 50 yards away, a boat drifted past. No lights, no motor, no sound, just sliding across the surface like a shadow. And sitting inside, hunched forward with his hands dangling into the water, was a man. I opened my mouth, ready to call out when I remembered Rule 3. If you see a boat drifting with no lights and no one inside, do not tow it. Do not board it. Leave it alone. But there was someone inside. I could see him, clear as day, even without my spotlight. I leaned forward, squinting, trying to make out his face. And that's when I realized he didn't have one. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over where his eyes and mouth should have been. I nearly dropped the wheel. Turned the boat so fast the engine coughed. By the time I looked back, the drift-in boat was gone, vanished, like it had never been there at all. I didn't finish the rest of my shift. I sped back to the dock, tied up, and didn't even bother logging the night. Miller was waiting for me on the pier. He took one look at my face, nodded once, and said, "You understand now." And the worst part? I did. Because the rules weren't there to guide you through your shift. They were there to keep you alive long enough to finish it. Chapter 3, Drowned Voices. The second night, I almost didn't show up. I sat in my car outside the station for 15 minutes, just staring at the lake through the windshield, wondering if I should drive home, quit, pretend this job never existed. But quitting wasn't an option. Not for me. I needed the paycheck. And besides, some part of me needed to know what was out there, what was hiding in the water. So I climbed aboard the patrol boat again. The air was heavy with mist that night, rolling low across the surface, making the lake look endless. For the first couple hours, nothing happened. A few fish jumped. A heron startled off a piling. I almost let myself relax. But then the voices came. They started faint, like whispers carried across the water. I thought it was the radio again, so I reached for the dial. But the radio was off. The voices were outside. I stood and turned slowly, scanning the fog. "Help us. Please." The words drifted out from the mist, surrounding me. Not one voice, dozens, men, women, children. And then I saw them. Pale shapes rising just beneath the surface. Faces half submerged, mouths moving, eyes wide and black. They didn't splash. They didn't thrash. They just floated there, whispering in unison. I gripped the side of the boat, frozen. One of the voices grew clearer than the rest. A man's voice. "Officer, I know you can hear me. I know you can see me." The same words from the night before. And then I realized something. The faces in the water weren't strangers. I recognized them. They were the faces from the missing persons board in the station lobby. The people who had drowned in the lake, the ones whose bodies were never recovered. Every news clipping, every photo, those faces were here, staring up at me from the dark water. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bench. My hand brushed against Miller's notebook in my pocket, the rules. I pulled it out, flipping desperately through the pages. No rule about this. No instructions for what to do when the drowned come calling. The faces pressed closer against the surface, mouths opening wider. Water poured from them as though they were speaking underwater, but still somehow audible. "Stay with us," they whispered. "Join us." I backed toward the motor, fumbling for the ignition. My hand slipped, and the flashlight clattered to the floor, rolling. The beam swung wildly across the water. And that's when I saw it. Not just faces this time. A shape. Huge, dark, moving beneath the surface. It slid under the boat, so massive I felt the hull rise slightly. The whispers grew frantic, overlapping, like dozens of voices chanting at once. I didn't wait. I started the engine, the roar breaking through the whispers. I gunned it toward shore, the mist tearing past me. But as I glanced over my shoulder, I saw them again. The faces, the drowned, gliding just beneath the surface, keeping pace with me. And in the middle of them, towering over the rest, was something else. Something that wasn't human. I didn't stop until I hit the dock so hard the boat shuddered. I tied off with shaking hands and stumbled onto the pier. Miller was there again, waiting. "You heard them," he said flatly. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. "They want you," he said. "They want everyone eventually, but the lake has rules. As long as you follow them, you'll last a while." "How long?" I croaked. Miller didn't answer. He just looked past me, out over the dark water, as though he was counting the faces waiting there. And that was when I realized he wasn't warning me to keep me safe. He was warning me because one day, he wouldn't be there to say it anymore. And then the lake would take me too. Chapter 4: The Lighthouse. By the third week, I was running on fumes. Sleep during the day, patrol at night, and the rest of the time spent trying not to think about the things I'd seen. But the lake doesn't let you forget. That night started quiet, too quiet. No fishermen, no night swimmers. Even the animals seemed to have abandoned the shoreline. I told myself it was a blessing, a calm shift. Maybe I'd make it through the night without hearing voices or seeing faceless men drifting past in empty boats. And for a while I believed it, until I saw the light. Out past the northern bank, a sharp beam swept across the water, cutting through the fog. Slow, steady rotations, just like a lighthouse. The problem was, there is no lighthouse on Lake Erie. Not on our stretch of it anyway. I stood up in the patrol boat, gripping the wheel. The light swept past again. This time, I thought I saw a shape beneath it. A tower, dark stone rising from the waves. My breath caught. Towers don't just appear in the middle of a lake. I pulled Miller's notebook from my pocket, flipping through pages. The rules. The rules had to say something about this. But there was nothing. Just the same 5, written over and over. I almost turned the boat around right there. Almost went back to the dock. But the beam swept past again, and I saw something on the water, something bobbing in the light. A life jacket. Then another. Then a whole line of them, drifting toward the tower. And clinging to one of them was a little girl. She was maybe 8 years old, her hair plastered to her head, eyes wide. She wasn't moving. "God, no," I muttered, slamming the throttle forward. The boat leapt across the water. I pulled up alongside her, reaching down. Her tiny hands clutched at mine. She was freezing, lips blue, but alive. I hauled her into the boat, wrapping her in a blanket. She whispered something I almost didn't catch. "They don't want me to leave," I stiffened. "Who?" Her eyes flicked toward the lighthouse, toward the black stone tower that shouldn't exist. Before I could say anything else, the beam swept over us again. This time it hit my face directly, blinding me. And in that instant, I heard them. The drowned voices, but louder now, surrounding us. "Return her. Return her. Return her." The boat rocked violently. Dark shapes circled beneath the surface, bumping the hull. I slammed the throttle again, turning hard toward shore. The tower loomed larger for a moment, impossibly close, before vanishing back into fog. When I looked down again, the girl was gone. The blanket lay empty on the seat. I nearly screamed, spinning around. The deck was clear. The water churned, but there was no sign of her. Just the life jackets, drifting, as though mocking me. I sped back to the dock, heart in my throat. Miller was waiting as always, his face drawn tighter than usual. "You saw it," he said quietly. "Not a question. The tower," I whispered. "The girl." He held up a hand, cutting me off. "That wasn't a girl," he said flatly. "That was the lake. Testing you." I stared at him, throat dry. "What happens if you fail the test?" For the first time, Miller looked me dead in the eye, and I swear there was fear there. "You don't get another shift," he said. Then he walked away, leaving me on the pier with nothing but the sound of the water lapping at the shore. And for the first time, I wondered how many officers before me had seen that same tower, and how many of them had failed. Chapter 5: The Procession. By the time my 5th week rolled around, I stopped questioning the rules. I stopped questioning anything. You can only see so many impossible things before your brain decides it's safer to just accept them. Still, I wasn't ready for what happened next. It was a warm night, the kind that should have felt peaceful. But around 12:30 a.m., the temperature dropped like someone had flipped a switch. I was patrolling near the western shoreline when the radio clicked on by itself. No static, no voice, just the sound of footsteps, wet ones, squish, squish. I shut the radio off. The sound kept going, not from the radio, from the trees. I turned toward the shore, shining my flashlight. And that's when I saw them. Figures walking out of the lake. One after another, barefoot and soaked, clothes dripping. Some wore fishing gear. Some wore dresses. One was in a wedding tuxedo, the fabric ruined by water. All of them moved in a perfect line, single file, eyes forward. And all of them were dead. I don't mean I thought they looked dead. I mean they were dead. Pale, waterlogged, rotted in places. But they moved like they didn't notice, like they had somewhere to be. I watched in silence as they stepped from the water and onto the rocks, and even though I knew I shouldn't, I started counting them. 1, 2, 3. Rule 5 slammed into my brain like a hammer. When you see the procession, don't watch. Don't follow, don't count. But it was too late. 4, 5, 6. They kept coming, and then the 24th one looked exactly like me. Same uniform, same boots, same face. But it wasn't me. It was wrong. Its mouth was too wide. Its smile stretched just a little too far. And when it turned its head to look at me, its eyes were empty. Black holes. It grinned, turned back, and kept walking. The whole procession filed past me, heading inland, toward the tree line, and then they disappeared into the woods. I should have left. I should have gone back to the dock. But instead, I followed. Not close. Just enough to keep them in sight. They didn't seem to notice me. Or maybe they didn't care. The trees opened into a clearing I'd never seen before. And in the center of it was a lighthouse. The same black tower I'd seen before, except now. It wasn't in the water, it was here, on land. I watched as the procession walked up to it. The door opened for them. They stepped inside one by one. When the last figure passed through, the door stayed open. Waiting, I stepped into the clearing. My body moved on its own, like I wasn't in control anymore. I climbed the steps, crossed the threshold, and inside, the air was freezing. The stone walls were wet. The stairs spiraled up forever. Far above me, I could see the red glow of the lantern, and the procession was waiting. All of them stood around the lantern in a perfect circle, their heads tilted toward it. And in the center of them stood a tall figure in an oilskin coat, holding a staff topped with a rusted bell. The keeper. He didn't speak, he didn't move, but I felt him looking at me. And without a word, he pointed to the lantern, as if to say, "It's your turn now." Chapter 6, The Last Rule. I stood inside that black lighthouse, staring at the circle of drowned figures and the keeper with his rusted bell. The lantern above pulsed faintly, red light dripping down the walls like blood. I knew I shouldn't have been there. I'd already broken the rules, but some part of me wanted to see it through. The keeper raised the staff, and the bell gave a dull clang that seemed to echo inside my bones. The procession of dead turned in unison, their empty eyes fixed on me. I wanted to run, but my legs refused. Then the keeper spoke. His voice was like waves grinding stone. "You are not ready, not yet." And with that, the lantern flared. I was outside again. On the dock, alone, the boat bobbing gently as though nothing had happened. But Miller was gone. The next day, I checked the station. His locker was empty. His badge was gone. No one seemed to remember he'd ever worked there. It was like he had been erased. And on the notice board, the one with the missing persons, his photo was there now. A grainy picture of him in uniform. Status, missing, presumed drowned. That night, I found the notebook he'd given me, the one with the rules. Except now, there were 6. A final line had appeared, written in Miller's sharp handwriting. Rule 6. When your reflection joins the procession, your time is up. I don't look in mirrors anymore. Not at home, not in the station, not in the lake. Because I know, one night soon, I'll see myself walking out of that water again. And when I do, my time is up. That's why I don't call this a job anymore. It's a sentence. Lake Erie doesn't let go, not of Miller, not of the drowned, and eventually, not of me. So if you ever come out here, if you ever see a patrol boat circling in the fog, don't wave. Don't call out. And for God's sake, don't look too closely. Because it might not be me behind the wheel anymore. Thank you for listening to tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, don't forget to like the video, share it with a friend who loves horror, and subscribe for more tailies that will keep you up at night. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the scariest things are real.